All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are here at the June 3rd Georgetown ISD Board Workshop. Today, we are going to go through workshop model of 2024-25 proposed budgets, and then Dan Wegmiller, who is our financial advisor, will be presenting to us on the bond issuance for your discussion. So I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Hannah to talk us through the proposed budgets for 24-25.
Good morning. Today, as we have been working through the last few months, we have the 2024-2025 proposed budgets. There are three budgets that are approved each year by the Board of Trustees. The General Fund, which is the main operating fund of the district; Food Service, which is our self-sustaining fund for selling meals to our students; and then our Debt Service, which is how we pay for our principal and our interest on our debt that we issue. These are what we call the big three budgets, and they will be brought to the regular June 17th board meeting for your approval. Along with the budgets, we also will be talking about next year's proposed tax rates. There are two parts to the tax rate, as you know: the maintenance and operation, or the NMO rate, which is 0.6992. This is set by TEA, and this was last year's rate. We have not received the new rate yet from TEA. We won't receive that until we get our July certified values, but we anticipate it's going to be compressed by 0.0023 cents to 6969. But at the current time, the rate we have is 0.6992. The INS rate is projected to be 0.3575 for a total tax rate of 1.0567, and this is 1 penny higher than last year.
What prompts us to think that the M&O rate will go down?
So TEA takes the statewide band, once they get certified values statewide, and from that band, they compress the rates. And so the 0.6969 is the very, very lowest rate. So we anticipate with our property value growth that we'll be into that lowest band of 0.6969. So not at all as much compression as we've seen in the last couple of years, but there's still some compression there. And the tax rate will be brought for approval at the August 19th regular meeting. So let's start with the general fund. So just want to go over on the left a couple of our major budget assumptions that we have been looking at for next year. No increase in the basic allotment or the funding formula. We are looking at, we budgeted an enrollment of 13,743, which is 200 students less than the demographer has projected. And we are projecting an average daily attendance of 12,688, which is at 92% of that number, which is adjusted down for pre-K. So if we look at the schedule on the right, and let's just start up at the top and kind of go through this. This is the 24-25 proposed budget. Revenues are at the top. So we have local revenues. Those are our tax collections, our facility rentals, our interest earnings. That is $142.3 million, which is 88.8% of the proposed budget. State, the next one down, is our TEA state entitlement that we received. That's $16.1 million, which is 10% of our revenues. Then we also have some federal, we have some reimbursements of our student health-related services, our grant indirect costs, and some other reimbursements for $1.9 million, so that's 1.2% of our revenues. So total revenue is projected at $160.37 million. And then if we go down to look at the expenditures, just kind of want to highlight a couple of these. So these are the expenditures by function. So all of the functions of the school district are represented here. And this is a TEA account structure that we use. The whole state uses this structure. So what I'd like to highlight is the very top function, which is instruction. That is, if you look at the very last column, that is 54.3% of our budget. That is our largest line item of our budget, which is everything having to do with teaching and instruction, classrooms, teachers. That is obviously our main mission of the district, and that is our biggest line item. 54.3% of our budget goes towards instruction. And then if you would just go down to maintenance, which is function 51, it's kind of halfway down. That's our next biggest function. That's 10.6% of our total budget, and that is going to include utilities, our property insurance, lots of things that are not controllable costs for us that are very large costs for the district. And then if you go down a little bit further to function 91, where it says contracted instructional services between public schools, that is actually our recapture. So that is our next biggest line item. That's 8.8% of our budget for next year is being sent back to the state for recapture. A couple of other ones that I just wanted to highlight, some functions, is that function 21, our instructional leadership, function 23, school leadership, and then function 41, general administration. Those percentages those make up our administrative cost ratio, and those are all lean. When we get our first report, those are factored in, and those are very lean percentages for the district.
Jennifer, can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
If you go back up here, the contracted instructional services between public schools, what is that? Is that
That's recapture.
that's the recapture?
That's what it's called per TPA.
Okay. My other question is, on the enrollment of 13,743 and the demographic, what are we sitting at right now?
We're at 13,000.
523.
So we're looking at 200.
Yeah, and we specifically under project enrollment because we want to build a conservative budget, not based upon what the demographic says. So if it's higher than 13,743, that's a very pleasant surprise. If attendance is higher than 92% next year, or 94%, that's a pleasant surprise for us. But we want to build the budget based upon very conservative thinking.
Okay, so you're saying that 92% is what we're building the budget on?
That's
and
correct.
I know we finished the year at 94%, which is
Well,
correct?
correct. So when it says 92% on here, it's actually calculated as a 94% for the school district. And so let me take just a second to explain why. So when we pull in our stats on attendance, our report says 94%. But pre-K is only funded at half day. So once we factor out pre-K, it comes down to 92%. That is the same for every other school district. So publicly and internally with our principals, we say our attendance is at 94%. But financially, it calculates at 92%.
Thank you.
So if we look down in the bottom, total expenditures are projected at $164.96 million, which is a deficit of $4.59 million for next year. The beginning fund balance for next year is projected to be $34.0 million, and the ending fund balance will be $29.46 million. So let's take a look at the budget in another way. This is the same general fund budget, but we also look at it by major object. So the major objects, again, TEA account structure, are payroll, professional contracted services, supplies, other operating expenditures, and capital outlay. Down at the bottom is recapture. So if we look at the left-hand side, just to talk about, kind of recap the work that we've done during this budget process and the development of this 24-25 budget. We've had expenditure increases in teacher and staff compensation. We are opening 3 new campuses next year. We are projecting enrollment growth. We are dealing with inflation, and we have a school safety aren't unfunded mandate that we are staffing marshals for. The work that we've done to decrease expenditures, we've been looking at staffing efficiencies. We have increased class sizes, and we have asked departments to reduce school budgets. So with that being said, if you look over at the column that is starting from the right, it shows the increase and the decrease from the prior year in this year's budget. So for payroll, the first major object, we are looking at an increase of $5.8 million. For professional contracted services, a reduction of $39,865. Supplies, reduced $244,000. Our operating expenditures, we're projecting will go up by $485,000. Most of that is utilities and our property insurance costs. Capital outlay, which is a small part of our budget because most of our capital outlay comes from bonds, but we are projecting a $97,000 decrease from the prior year in capital outlay. So total operating expenditures increase is $6 million, and then a $4.3 million increase in recapture. So total expenditure increase is $10.3 million in this projected budget. If we look at a graph of those totals for next year, you can see the largest component of our budget is in the blue, and that's payroll. So that's 86%. Contracted services is next at 9%. That's in the red section. And then supplies, 3%. Other operating expenditures, 1.9%. And then capital outlay, very small, 1% of the budget. So let's move on to the food service fund.
Jennifer, I'm just thinking about the contracted services. I'm trying to think where that is contracted services is like that to food, because that's, we contract with a company to do that. Are there other examples that where we contract? I guess our custodial at the elementary is contracted. Are there any others that's I'm not thinking about?
Well, we do have some special ed services that we contract. I do want to keep in mind that child nutrition is going to be on the next slide, so it's not included in this contracted service in the general fund.
So, say that again.
So you're talking about general fund, right? What would
Over
make
here it says 9% is contracted services. So I'm just asking, what are some examples of what contract custodials we've used in the past, and maybe we're looking at maybe not using them or using them wrong amount.
Right. Custodial is one of those. It's a large amount.
Right.
It's over $3 million, or approximately $3 million. And then we do special ed services.
Okay.
That are also the contracted services for the child nutrition are going to be the next budget that we talk about.
Okay.
That are in food service.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Just add, there are a lot of small expenditures we put in there, things like various legal fees that we have throughout the school year are included in contracted services. Basically, any outside vendor that we work with is included in that slice in there. So.
And sometimes we do see a bit of differential if our payroll goes up and our contracted services go down. It depends on who we're able, who we're able to hire.
Yeah.
Based on the year.
That makes sense. Okay. Thanks.
So we move on to the food service fund. This is a self-sustaining fund. This is how we feed our students. And we do have 43% of our students are on free and reduced federal meal reimbursement. And we do, as we just talked about, we do contract with Southwest Food Excellence, SFE, for our child nutrition services. So if we look over at the schedule, start with the revenues. So the local revenue of $3.2 million is going to be our sales that we make to our students. State, we get a small contribution from the state. The federal is the reimbursement that we get for the National School Lunch Program and our school breakfast program, so that's $4.1 million, for a total of $7.4 million in revenues. Then if we go down to expenditures, there's one function in food service, and that's function 35, food service, and in that is our payroll and our contracted services that we pay to SFE. So that's $7.4 million, and so that is a net of zero. Our expenditures will match our revenues.
Question on that, if that's self-sustaining, why do we keep a fund balance?
Well, that's actually a good question. We are actually spending down our fund balance. We, from COVID, for about 2 years ago, they increased the reimbursement rates, so we actually have an excess. And so we are being required by TDA to plan to spend that down.
And what can we spend food service budget fund balance on?
We are spending on smallwares and updating some of our ovens, and there's we're working with child nutrition on a list of items that are either aging.
But it stays in the food.
It has to stay in the food records, yeah. So it's things that we can update with the food service, yeah. They're things that they use that are. Okay, so now, our last big three is the debt service fund. So the debt service fund is how we pay our principal and interest payments for the bonds that we issue. And the payments are due twice a year. Our first payment of the fiscal year is due in August, and then the second payment is due in February. And so we have a schedule, a debt schedule that we pay. We are going to be hearing soon about our 2024 issuance later today. And so that is going to affect our principal and interest payments. So once we find out what those are going to be, we'll amend the budget. But we are looking at, if you look over on the right, we are looking at revenues of $71.6 million. And then debt service will be $71.6 million as well. We do have a fund balance in debt service. And the reason why we have that is because when we make that first payment in August, we have not collected our tax collections yet. So, because most of those are collected in October, November, December, January. So we need to have cash flow to pay that first debt payment, and then as we get the tax collections in, that replenishes.
So then our February payment is bigger than the August payment? Is that how we should do it?
I think they're, damn it.
And this makes it up during the August.
This is a perfect segue for our financial advisor.
This may be blindingly obvious to everybody, but it's always worth noting that nothing about the fund balance here can be used to support the needs in our M&O, which pays for people.
Because this entire local revenue comes from the INS.
Property tax, the INS side of the tax rate. Many of you have met Ian Wagner. Yes, you got involved with the CAC, but I don't know that you've been involved with that.
Yeah, so Dan Wegmiller, a specialized public finance financial advisor to the district now. And congratulations on the passage of an election. It's always a monumental task to consider. Our role is just to help through the issuance of the bond program as we move forward. And I think it's important to note that the fund balance piece of it kind of generates from most of the bond payments have been February, August throughout time. And then many districts switch to a 6/30 fiscal year from an August fiscal 31 fiscal year. And to keep those bond payments aligned, we just have to keep an eye and a fund balance because you don't collect anything before the year starts until early spring or late fall. So that fund balance is critical, and we are now looking to push more of the payments till February just to have that cushion. And that way the reliance on fund balance will be less and less hopefully over time.
So I think, if you have any questions, because Dan's presentation is next, so we kind of move in.
So we asked to just put this item before you to prepare you on the schedule of what we're looking at for the issuance of bonds. The permanent school fund guarantee has already been submitted to TEA for its approval. That should come out sometime later this month. But what the real driver for this program will be first July 15th, coming back to the board and asking your consideration on a delegation approval, which delegates the board president, superintendent, or CFO, or a combination of those, to approve the sale of bonds when we're ready to go to the market. That process will include setting the amount in the delegation, not to exceed. What we're recommending is up to $375 million. The big driver is certified values, what revenue will be supporting it. The other part will be interest rate, maximum interest rate allowed, maximum term allowed. But those are all going to be consistent with what we prepared for staff and looking at the different bond structure amounts throughout the lead up to the election. So we're asking consideration up to $375 because part of that process is, can you spend the money within a 3-year period? That's one of the drivers. The other piece is arbitrage. If you sell the bonds and you're sitting on it and earning interest, we hope to sell something in the 4% range this time around. If you're able to earn more, which folks are earning more, arbitrage is a good thing. It's only bad when you're not tracking it and know that you need to pay it back to the IRS. So anything you can earn up and above what you're paying will be beneficial to the project. So looking at that 3-year window is part of the real driver, but we're going to be, the parameters will be that certified value growth that will help us. So that will lead us more towards the end of July for actual sale. So July 15th would be the board delegating to the 3 members I just mentioned as the delegated officials. Then we get the certified rolls hopefully around July 24th or so. And then we'll firm up what the structure looks like, what the capacity is. We'll also look at current interest rate environment. And then kind of come up with what the amount is to sell. We're estimating somewhere around $300 million, and that's what all the pre-planning was looking at. During that time, we will ask for a bond rating update from both Moody's and S&P. You have AA from S&P, AA1 from Moody's, outstanding ratings. We anticipate when we go to market, we'll have obviously the BSF guarantee, which makes it AAA. Those 2 bond ratings, we'll be looking at selling sometime late July or soon thereafter once we all get comfortable with the numbers. That delegation gives us the flexibility to enter the market when we're ready. We'll be looking at the calendar of other issuers coming to market at the time we want to come to market. The good news is you're going to have the highest credit quality, one of the highest credit qualities coming out. You'll also have probably one of the larger issues hitting the market. So we, kind of believe you'll be the bellwether whenever we want to go out there. So we'll work with staff to come up with a timing to specifically go and price the bonds. But that'll be late July, maybe early August. We'll firm that up this month and then ultimately close around August 21st. That's when we get the funds. And then those rates are locked in going forward, and you can just focus on the project delivery of what you've taken down. So that's an overview of the issuance process. We want to let you know we'll be coming back July 15th with that parameters order.
there any other questions for either Ms. Hannah or Mr. Wegmiller? We appreciate all the work that you're doing behind the scenes to help us not only get a proposed budget for this fall, but also to do the complicated behind the scenes work of bond issuance. So thank you so much for being here.
Absolutely, thank you.
And Madam Vice President, unless there are any other items, I believe this
It's
is
a pretty light agenda, which is pretty normal for June.
Yeah.
We're all a little tired.
Yeah.
So, anything else?
All right. This adjourns our meeting. Thank you so much.
That's it.